time for an April wrap-up. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is the April 2023 wrap-up. Before we jump into the video, make sure you're checking the description box down below for links to my social media and Discord, should you want to come along for the ride. Now in April, I had a pretty good month. I read more books than I have in any given month this year so far, and the reason for that is one was a carryover, and one was a novella, and there was a few shorter reads in there, and by short, I mean sort of between that 400 to 500 page mark, which just let me get a few more in rather than the big chunkers. So we're going to start off with the carryover, and that was Shadowfane by Jenny Wirtz. I had about 50 pages of this to go in the month of April and knocked it out in the first day or two, I think. So with this one, I didn't actually enjoy this one as much as I did with the remainder of the series. So that was Storm Warden and Keeper of the Keys. I like those two a lot. I still like the prose in here. I think Jenny Wirtz does amazing prose, and it's very vivid and it gives the reader a lot to think about, but some of the elements in here didn't work for me quite as well as those first two. The main one I'll bring up is how quick the elements that were built up in the first two books were basically explained. So we had this cycle of fire that our main character had to go through, and that whole process was so fast compared to this build-up that we'd had for two books. And there was another character who, I won't name names because I don't want to give spoilers away, who was sort of like a villain character who didn't start as a villain, and then the conclusion to his story was very fast in comparison to how much build-up there had been and how much character development there had been over the first two books. But I still enjoyed it. I think I gave this one a 3.5 when it comes to star rating. So it was alright, it just wasn't my favourite of the month. The next one that I picked up was The Forbidden Realms. This was by H.C. Newell, which is book 2 in the Fallen Light series. This is a book that I wanted to get to for a long time, especially since reading the first book and really enjoying Curse of the Fallen, and book 2 did carry across a few of those things that I did like from book 1. Again, we've got a fast-paced story here. We've got a main character that really does learn as she goes along, and H.C. Newell is absolutely amazing at character banter and character interactions. One of my favorite things that happens in Forbidden Realms within the scope of the characters is that there was easily a character dynamic which could have been turned romantic for the sake of the audience. Because even in my head, when I was reading, I was like, those two are going to get together. But the main character, Narena, stuck to her guns, and that didn't eventuate. And when that happens in real life, it can be complicated, particularly if that person that has romantic feelings and is not reciprocated is a friend. And I think that was really well done here. My main criticism for Forbidden Realms, which you'll see in my full review coming out later this month, is that there is too much happening. In every chapter there is a certain event that takes place, or there is an event that takes place, and it made me as the reader look forward for that formula and to think, when is something going to happen in this chapter? And there's a lot of moving pieces, but I had a great time. I think I gave this one a 4. Don't quote me on that. I haven't actually checked star ratings since I started this video. The next one I picked up was an anticipated release. This was Seeds of War by João F. Silva, a debut grimdark fantasy coming right at you, and that is now available. So I read this one as an ARC, but it did come out May 1st. If you're interested, I'll put up above my full review for this one, non-spoiler review, so you can go and check that one on out. I won't go too much into it in terms of the wrap-up, but as a quick synopsis, this is a very character-driven story. We've got 3 main POVs. We've got Gimlor, Oberesis, which I've just recently learned to pronounce correctly, and Red Now. These 3 characters are sort of celebrated as characters you wouldn't necessarily see in these types of stories, but they are survivors through and through, and the plot unfolds within the character stories. If you are someone who loves a character-driven read that's a little bit darker, then you're absolutely going to want to check this one out. It has been likened to people like Joe Abercrombie. In my opinion, most people here know I'm not a super huge Abercrombie fan. I would say that the plot and the thematics in Seeds of War are better. Go and buy it, read it for yourself. The next one I picked up was my first audiobook for the month, and that was The Iron Crown by L.L. McRae, which I should be holding up. I adored this book. This was a 5-star read for me. In the month of April, we're following Fen, who has lost his memory and woken up on the Isle of Salt. He's then taken in by Kalidra and Giselle. I have to remember names. I'm not great at names. I'm okay with plots for memory. And then this bigger mystery unfolds about the Mere. So it turns out that Fen has been Mere touched. These are creatures of death and destruction, and he's also wanted by the Iron Crown. So I had a really good time with this one. I will have a full review coming out later this month for the Iron Crown, where I go a bit more into depth with what I liked in this book. Next up, we had the chonker for the month, and that is Deadhouse Gates by Steven Erikson. Now, this was originally not on the cards for me this month, but Roger and Mark wanted to keep going with Gardens of the Moon after we read that one in March, and they wanted to keep going with Deadhouse Gates. I think they also wanted to keep going with Memories of Ice, and I was like, I've got too many review copies and deadlines for authors, so that one's going to have to wait. But I had a great time with Deadhouse Gates. I will admit the first 20%, really fast-paced, good. I would disagree with people saying you've got a completely new set of characters, because you do have some carryovers which help solidify the storyline in book 2. First 20%, super fast-paced, and then the middle, I would say 60% of the book. So maybe 50% of the book was very slow. We had a lot of military formations, we had a lot of thematics, we had a lot of philosophy within the character stories that we were following, and then the last sort of 30%, so the last 350 pages for me, I absolutely blitzed through. We've got some really big events happening in those last 350 pages. I really enjoy Erikson's storytelling style. This is the book that divides some people because of a character called Felisen. I won't go too much into it. If you know, you know. She's a young girl, sexual abuse in the first few chapters. It's pretty brutal, straight up, to be completely honest with you, and it can divide some readers. Now, I think this book was dark. I still don't think it's the darkest thing I've ever read, but I think I ended up giving this one a 4-star as well. A lot of 4-star reads this month. I'm really enjoying my Malazan journey. I am looking forward to picking up Memories of Ice, which I believe will happen in June. Moving on from there, we've got my second, it's not an immersion read, but I did part on audio and part physically, and that was the last book in the Dragonlance Chronicles, which is Dragons of Spring Dawning. I got that one wrong. So I listened to most of this book, and it went a little bit over my head, so I ended up picking up the physical to finish it off, and got more out of it. So overall, once I'd gone through and reread some of the things that I'd missed initially listening on audio, it was a fairly satisfying conclusion to the trilogy of the book. Now, being a book 3, I won't go too far into it, but we did get a lot more character interactions and a lot more character moments in the third book, so it did feel quite a bit slower than the first 2 books, which was quite plot heavy. Remembering that this is a D&D campaign, it's a little bit zany, a little bit nuts, and sometimes the plot sort of interweave and go weird places. It was a lot of fun. It has made me interested in picking up the second trilogy at some point. I just don't know when. Then I picked up The Fall on the last day of the month. This is the Bound and the Broken 0.5. It's a prequel novella to the Bound and the Broken by Ryan Cahill. Now, I'm not a mood reader, but for some reason this novella would not leave my head for many days. I've been thinking about it for months now and just not picking it up because I'm not a mood reader. I like planned reading. But I ended up finishing the Dragons of Spring Dawning on the 29th, and I didn't have anything to pick up on the 30th, knowing full well I was going to start a new book pretty quickly. So I thought, I've got a day, I will fit it in. It's about 90 pages or something like that, and I read it in a day. I quite liked it. I can definitely see why people enjoy this type of story. I think I ended up giving it a 3.5 or a 4. It's very classic fantasy. It's very classic fantasy feeling. The novella was fast-paced, action-heavy. The writing was sharp and snappy, but for me personally, it's not doing anything new. But I don't know that Ryan Cahill is trying to. I think that there is definitely a place for modern fantasy with a classic fantasy feel, and that's what's happened here. We do have some interesting takes on dragons, which I quite liked, the bonded dragons. I know that's been done before, but I like it. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. I didn't get to know the characters very well because it was only 90 pages, so I can't really comment there, but I had a really fun time with it, and it has made me interested in picking up the first book. Eventually, that may be a 2024 read for me to do the series, because those books get chunky towards the end of them. But that is everything that I read in the month of April for 2023. I believe I finished my arc for The Shattered Arch by M.H. Woodscourt in May. I'm not 100% sure, but I did put the review up on the 2nd of May, so I'm thinking that was this month. There's a lot going on this month, and my brain is like, what are we doing? So, we're gonna cap it there. No, wait, there was one more. I actually beta read a lit RPG by our friend Palmer Pickering. I won't give details away because it is in the works. Just know that it was a short, snappy, super fun literary RPG, which hopefully we can see later this year, and I had a really good time with it. Had a call with Palmer a little while after reading it and said, to be honest, I don't think there's much that you need to do to get this out in the world. So hopefully we get to see that one pretty shortly. Okay, those are the things that I read in the month of April of 2023. What was your favorite read of the month? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like the content, give one of those. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will. I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao.